Welcome to the Extender demo. My name is Nicole Albertson, and I'm happy to be here to show what Extender can help you do to meet your unique business needs. Extender allows you to maintain that uniqueness and capture the exact data you need in Microsoft Dynamics GP. It will help you build out the windows to capture that data without having to call in a programmer to create them. Each field you add to your window is defined by you, and you determine whether it should be a string, integer, list, or any other of the available field types. Once you determine that, Extender will take care of storing the setup and data for you. With any data you enter in Microsoft Dynamics GP, you want to be able to report on it as well. Extender data can be viewed in SmartList and SmartView, your Excel reports, and navigation lists. You can also add that data to Report Writer reports and many other reporting tools that are available to use with Microsoft Dynamics GP. Extender does have two different releases. Extender Standard will allow you to do everything we've talked about so far in the capturing of your data, storing it, and allowing you to report on it. Extender Enterprise adds in some great additional features. Not only can you capture your data, but you can also add business logic and processes to that data. Extender Enterprise allows you to open up the Microsoft Dynamics GP functionality and add logic to have it do just about anything you can think of. When we look at Extender, there are two basic ways to capture data. We have Extender Windows and Extender Forms. Extender Windows are attached to a Microsoft Dynamics GP window. You'll open that GP window, retrieve a record. From there then, the Extender window can be opened, and the data in that Extender window will be attached to the specific record that was open in the GP window. An Extender form, on the other hand, is independent of any of the data in Microsoft Dynamics GP. Extender forms are accessed from menus that are also created in Extender. It can be like creating your own little module in Microsoft Dynamics GP. I think the best way to understand Extender's capability is to see it in action. So let's switch over to Microsoft Dynamics GP and do just that. So here we are on the item maintenance window in Microsoft Dynamics GP. There just isn't enough fields on this window to track the information we need to about our items. So I've added an Extender window that I have auto opening when I enter the item class field. This is going to allow me to track the information I need about our items. So if I pull up an item, and I tab through the window till I get to that class ID field, you can see that it automatically opened the item extra details window that I have in Extender. And now I can track that additional data that I need about my item. So I can select my price sheet, I can select where my brochures are, and then I can enter in information about who the product manager is. As we go through this window, you can see that each field has its own unique field type. So it's asking me for the information that applies to the type of data that's on this window. So when I save that data now, it is applied to the 100 XLG item. If I change items and click in that class field, it does not have the data we just entered. But if I go back to that 100 XLG and have it trigger our open our window, it does have that data we have saved. Now, any additional window that you create in Extender can also be opened by going to Additional and selecting that window, but we've put an auto open so that it automatically triggers that open for us. So if we go back and look at it, the setup in Extender, we have them side by side here, you can see that all I've done is selected which window I want this to go on in Microsoft Dynamics GP, but we do have availability for all of the products you have installed. And then I've selected the different fields that I want. So I've put on my price sheet, said that it's going to be a file type field. I've also put on a brochure is going to a folder, so you can choose how that's going to browse. Some different email addresses, phone numbers, websites, whatever you need. And it's very simple to add a new field, and we'll just add one here for our target market for this item. And when I do so, I have to enter the field prompt in and then pick a field type. And you can see we have basically all the fields that would be available to you in GP to use. For this one, we're going to actually select a drop-down list, and we can create our own list items for that field. So I'll add some here, and maybe we'll make it SMB, government, consumer, and enterprise. We'll add those, and now we have that list. So I can simply save this, save my window that I've changed now, and when I relaunch that item extra window, you can now see we have a target market field as well, where I can choose the options that I typed in. If we go back to that setup, you can also see a lot of other things here that we can do. Besides just adding regular fields, we can create calculated fields. We can move our fields up and down. Maybe you're adding fields and you want them in a different order. We can move those up and down to make the order more appropriate. We can make fields required by just selecting which field we want to be required and marking the box here. That field will now be required to enter for the user to save data on that window. So I've shown you how easy it is to add a field to an extender window, but how does this setup go from scratch? Let's take a look at creating a new window. So I'm going to clear that. And what we want to do is create a window on the customer addresses. So what I want to do is on this sales customer address maintenance window, I want to add some additional fields that are going to track things like the shipping hours at this address. Is there a shipping dock? Do we need a tailgate lift? So, different things like that about how we're going to ship to this customer. So we can create an extender window for that by going back to extender. And we'll just create a window ID. So we'll just call this ship info. And then the description is going to be what our window is truly called when the end user is using it. So we won't abbreviate that. We'll call it customer shipping information. We simply have to pick which window we want this to go on, and so it's going to be in the GP product, the series of sales, and then I want the customer address maintenance. So we'll select that. It automatically selected my key fields. How is my data going to link to that customer address maintenance window when I enter extender data? But I could change these if I needed to. I'm good with how that's linking, so I'm going to leave those alone. And now it's a matter of entering our fields. So I know I want shipping hours, and I'm just going to make that a string. They can type in whatever they need there, but you can see that we could change the format of that if we wanted it numeric only, but I think we'll need AM and PM and that kind of thing, so we'll make that just no format. And we can change how many characters are allowed, but I'm going to leave it at 30. So we have that. Let's put a couple more on here. We'll put shipping dock. And we're going to make that a checkbox. Just check it if they have one. And we'll put something about the lift gate on here. And we'll make that a checkbox as well. The last field we'll do is just kind of a notes field, and we'll make that a long string. Now the difference between when I did a short string and a long string, short string is 30 characters, long string is 256. So you have that option. How long do you want them to be able to store that? So let's save this and see how that window looks now that we've just created it. To get that window to show up under additional, I do have to relaunch that customer address maintenance window just to get it to show up on the menus. But now again with extender windows, we have to pull up a customer record. So we'll just pull up Aaron Fitz, and we'll pull up one of his addresses. And now when we go to additional, we see our new window we just created. And here you can see that I'm tied based on those keys, the customer number and address code, which I have pulled up in our GP window, and I have the 4 fields that we added to our new window. So I can enter this data. And we'll say they need a lift gate and there are no notes, and we'll save that. And now I have that data stored. And again, if I change what my keys are, I can enter new data. You can see we're on the warehouse, not primary. But if we go back, that data will always be stored against that key that we entered in. Now on that window, we can do some additional things in Extender. So let's go back there and retrieve our window. We've been entering in kind of a one-to-one relationship. I could have one record of shipping hours for that location. I could have one marking of a shipping dock, that type of thing. But what if I needed to store maybe the shipping contact on this, and maybe there's a couple of them. It's a big warehouse. There's going to be a couple different people I can call to get help. Well, I can't do that here unless I just create multiple fields, shipping contact 1, shipping contact 2 type of thing. In Extender windows, we also have an option to do a scrolling grid. So that gives you that option to track multiple records for this one GP record. So by going to options here, we have a scrolling grid, and I can enter in new fields here. So I can say this is shipping contact, and we'll just make that a string. Maybe we'll have their phone number, and we'll make that a phone number field. And we'll do their email and make that an email address field. So we've entered 3 different scrolling grid fields. You can see you can enter up to 10 basically here. 2 rows of 5 each is what we can have. But we'll save this window setup here and go back now and look at it on our customer address maintenance. So now you can see I've added those fields. We still have that data I entered previously, but in the bottom half, I can have now my shipping contact information. So I can enter in the phone number, the email, or whatever I need to, but I can enter in multiple records. So we can go on that and enter in as many as we need to there. Now with Extender windows, you can have the one-to-one relationship that we saw first with our shipping hour, shipping dock, these type of fields on the top half. We can have just a one-to-many relationship and just have a scrolling grid. Or we can have both, like we do in this scenario where we have some of that one-to-one relationship, and then we also have a one-to-many in our scrolling grid. So that's up to you which fields you need and how do you need them. Do you need to have multiple records for that field, or is it just a one-to-one type of relationship there? Now in GP, when you look at windows, a lot of times you see the same data in multiple places. Or maybe you're doing something against a transaction. Once you've posted that transaction, you can't pull it up in the entry anymore. You have to go to the inquiry. Well, with Extender, we want you to be able to see your Extender data that was attached to your GP records as that data moves around the system as well. So we had information on our items, but I want to be able to see that on more than just the item maintenance window. I want to be able to maybe see that on something like the sales transaction where I have items, but I want to see that data there. So I can actually add it to, let's just pick a window here, for example, maybe the sales transaction inquiry zoom. Maybe I want to see that information here when I look at an item. Well, we can do that in Extender. We call them inquiries. So I can add an inquiry, and we'll just call this item extra inquiry. Now I have to pick which window do I want to see that on. Well, I want to see that on the sales transaction inquiry zoom. And I actually see that the item number is in the scrolling grid, so I want it in that scrolling grid to get to that item number. Now I can make this window read only if I'd like to. So we'll do that because it is an inquiry. I don't want them to be able to edit the data in this window. They can edit it when they go to item maintenance, but when they're in the sales transaction inquiry Zoom, I don't want them to be able to edit this. So I'm going to save this and save our extender window again. To get it on that menu, I'm just going to close that window. We can pull open that window again. And now when I highlight any of my items here, they're all the same here, so no matter which one I highlight, it's going to open the same information. But if I go to additional, we have item extra inquiry, and that's what we just added as an inquiry. Now this is a different item than what we entered in as 100 XLG, but you can see that we're following up data for this item as well, and so we have that data in here. It is read-only. I cannot change a path here on the price sheet. I can't change any of the fields here, so it is being read-only because I marked that checkbox. But the great thing about Extender is that I could create multiple inquiries, some read-only, some not read-only, and then assign my security appropriately. So maybe our account manager can change those on an inquiry window, but our standard users cannot. So we can have something like that going on as well. With our window as well, we have the option to add our data to SmartList, and we can do so directly from Extender to add it to some of the basic smart lists that exist. It's not going to be a complete list of all the smart lists, but you can see it's a subset of the list, so we could add this to the item smart list, and I just have to tell it my key field is my item number. How does that match in that smart list? So we'll pick item number and save that. Save our window, and if we launch SmartList now and go to our item list, when we go to columns and go to add, if I sort this by the sequence because ours will be the last ones added, you can see here is those different fields that we entered onto our extender window, and there on that 100 XLG is that record we created. So you can get that data directly to SmartList. If you want to go to other smart lists or you want to make it a little bit more dynamic there, SmartList Builder is another E1 product that allows you to create new smart lists. And if we look at that in either the SmartList Builder, Excel Report Builder, or Navigation List Builder, when we create one, in our table types, we will see extender resource. So we can add those extender windows and forms that we're creating directly in the builders to pull those in here as well. So you have that integration so that you can pull the extender data into SmartList that way, or directly from Extender. We can also pull it into Excel reports here and navigation lists as well. Now in Extender, the other reporting options we have are to add it to some of the default GP reports. So pulling our window back up, what we can add to the default GP reports in Report Writer, which is GP's reporting tool, is these 15 fields here on the main Extender window. So we can add any of those 15 fields that we want to say our invoice or a edit list or anything like that. The one thing we can't add off of an Extender window to those GP reports is the scrolling grid. So on our customer addresses where we entered some scrolling grid information, we couldn't put those on any of the GP reports. It just doesn't work to flow those through. But we can get these 15 fields. Now if you're using reporting tools outside of the standard GP ones, maybe you're using SQL reporting services, Crystal Reports, something like that, Extender does have an option to create SQL views directly from your window or form. So we can create a SQL view. Now we can add a GP table to this if we want. We're just going to add our Extender window and there you can see all of those fields. This will add your one-to-one relationship fields, those 15 main fields, as well as your scrolling grid fields that you may have. So we can mark all those. When I save this, it has gone into SQL and created a SQL view that I can now use wherever I need to. Now you need to manage the security around that SQL view. We're not sure who you want to have access to that, so we aren't giving anybody access. but you can go manage that and give that out as you need. The nice thing about those SQL views is that you don't have to understand the extender table structure to be able to create them. We're going to do all of that for you. Now there's another window type called a note window in Extender, and I actually have one set up here, so let's go look at those. And we'll just do it on our items again. But it's just a little bit different setup. The basic thing here is the window type. Instead of field entry like our original one was, I chose note list. And now I get a note window. So if I go to our item maintenance window and pull up our 100 XLG, you will see when I go to additional, I have item notes. And this is what an item note window looks like. Now here, the nice thing about the extender notes is that I can add multiple notes. We'll just enter some very simple notes here. And you can see each one I enter in is telling me who entered it or who last modified it, the date and time that that modification happened. And then it gives you the preview kind of that note. If you've typed a lot in, it's just the first couple characters there. But we can add as many notes as we want to here. Each one is stored as a separate record. So if you want to report on them, they're individual records. We can also print them or export them to Excel if we'd like to. So the nice thing there is since they are individual records, it's not like the GP notes where you're kind of just maybe entering a note, entering down a couple lines, and then entering more of a note in there. It's not one big note, it's individual records for us. The other thing those notes have, if we look at it, is a note type here. So we can actually add types, and I'm just going to call them type 1 and type 2 so that you can see those come in. And I'm going to save that. Now when we come back here and go to item notes, you can see an additional column here. And when I double click on one of these, I have a drop down here at the top to pick a type. So I can enter types, or if I do a new one, I can enter that type as well. That allows you to basically classify your notes so that you can kind of sort them by that type or search by that type, whatever you need to do. Maybe you track internal notes versus notes that came from the customer or vendor notes on that item, different things like that. Now those note windows have the inquiry option as well, so we can add those to other windows in GP, as well as we can add that data to SmartList. Now, as we talked about earlier, there is a second way to capture data in Extender, and that's called forms. And again, the forms are completely independent of any of the GP data that you might have or any windows that you use in GP. They're open from their own menu that you have to create in Extender. So let's just take a look at how they differ from the window and what we can do to use them. Now I have some already set up, and it's going to be a property management template where we're going to track the properties that we have. If we were a property management company, what properties do we own? And then if they're an apartment or a twin home or a condo, what units are in those? Who's renting those from us? Maybe some information about who is the manager of that building. When they do work orders, we could track that. All of that information that comes along with owning a bunch of properties. So I have them set up, and I have a menu under cards called property management. So this looks like it's a module that's been in GP. Nobody's really know the difference that I created this from scratch unless I tell them. So what we can do is we'll go to our property, say we just bought a new property, and one of E1's locations is in Fargo, North Dakota, so we'll just call this Fargo 123. And we can enter in that address for our property that we bought. Maybe we will say it's an apartment. It has 20 units in it, and we acquired that today. Now, none of that data has anything to do with GP. But what if I want it to link to GP? I can do that. My manager in my system is also an employee. So the people I have managing my units are employees of mine. I pay them. So I might as well have this link back to the GP employee so that I don't maybe type it wrong here. So Jane manages this building. I might as well use that record. That way I don't worry about maybe forgetting a 0 or something as I type it, and when I go report, I miss that record because I typed it wrong. So we can link the data back to GP if we want to. Okay, and we can store that. So I'll hit save there. Well, now we bought that property. We said there's 20 units, so we need to go create some units. So now I'm going to pull up that property. So I have this unit maintenance form linked to my property maintenance form. So there's that property we created. And now I don't have any units yet. We just created this. So let's create unit 100. And we'll just give it a description. Maybe it is 800 square feet. We rent it for $900. It's 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms. It has 1 parking spot and 2 garage stalls, we'll say. And now we can choose all the different amenities that that apartment has. We'll just check some boxes to have something checked there. So I can save that. Now I have that unit in there, but I could create 101. And I'm not going to enter all the data, but we'll just have 2 units there. So now I've created all 20 units, we'll pretend. And since we bought this, it already has tenants in it, so we need to add those tenants into our system. Now, this type of ID, we have it doing a automatic increment of a number, similar to document numbers in GP. You know, my tenant ID, I just wanted tenant 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, but of course I had to put some zeros in there to account for the numbers to grow so that my sorting is right. And we'll just pretend I'm renting that. And now these are lookups back to our property. And then this will show me the units in that property that we created. So it's got that lookup functionality back to other forms that we have. And I can enter information about that tenant if I'd like to. At the bottom of all of our windows, you've been seeing these buttons. The other forms just had 1 button on them. We have multiple. Here we can track some additional information. You know, we need to know who they're employed by so we can track that employer. And you can track up to 15 additional fields on each of these buttons. Just to show you how a form differs in setup from a window, I'm going to open that tenant maintenance form. And we can see that here. So now if I have that, and have the tenant maintenance on the side there for you, you can see it's basically the same. If I look at one of these fields, we have the same field types. The big difference here is that we actually have 2 columns of 15, so we have 15 more fields we can put on a form than we could on a window. The other big difference is I'm not picking a GP window to attach to, it's independent. So I had to create that field prompt. Now that tenant maintenance one is using that auto increment, so I've set that up here. But here's how we can use an existing lookup, or when we did our property, we had a secondary lookup for the unit. That's how I created this here. We also, if I go into options, have our option for a scrolling grid, so we can have that option as well. You can have just the 30 fields that we are using on our forms here. We can have just the scrolling grid, or we can have both like we saw in the customer address window that we used. So there isn't a lot of difference between a form and a window as far as how you set them up, that type of thing. It's really about, do you want this data linked to your GP data? You have to pull up a record in GP to enter that data, or do you want it independent here? And if you need to, you can pull that GP data in, but it isn't necessary if you don't need it. So it's really a determination on what project you're trying to set up in your system and how you want that set up. Now everything we've looked at to this point is available in Extender Standard. I want to show you a couple examples of what we can do with Extender Enterprise to take it and add that logic functionality, to take it that step further and have it start doing things for us so we don't have to remember to do it, or it drives kind of our usage in the day and we aren't going all over GP to do things. We're going to bring that all together where we need it. So on our tenant maintenance here, we looked at the employer option to store just some extra data, and that's available in standard. But if I move over to, say, this cash receipts window, to say this cash receipts button, when I click that, using Extender Enterprise, it's actually going to open the cash receipt entry window in GP for me, pass through the customer ID, being my tenant ID, putting that in there. Now we just created that tenant in Extender, so it doesn't exist as a customer in GP yet. But GP recognizes that and says, do you want to add this customer? So we can say add, opens the customer maintenance window where I can save that tenant. And now they're a customer in my system. So we could put in that they paid their $900 rent check. And I'm not ready to post that, so I'm just going to save that for now. But now I have a history button here. When I click that, that opens the inquiry window, and I can actually see that rent check we just entered here and drill down on that to see the information about it. So I'm not having to go to all the different windows in GP to enter the rent check, to view it, to view past ones, anything like that. I'm on my one tenant maintenance window that I've created as an extender form, and I can drill back from there back to where I need to in GP. So just saving a lot of mouse clicks, a lot of data retrieval, having to remember what tenant ID it was, that type of thing. So that's where Extender Enterprise can help us kind of take and make all of your stuff in GP flow so that we don't have to move about the system in such a tedious way of entering it all again and again. Some other things we can do with Extender Enterprise is if I go to the sales transaction entry, you're going to notice that the batch ID is automatically populating. Well, Extender Enterprise opens up a whole new world in GP so that not only can I just add some additional things to my windows, but I can open it up and write code on my windows if I want to. So if we go back to our tenant maintenance and go to actions, and I add an action, there's different things we can do that are set up for us in Extender that are available with Extender Enterprise. We have options here where we can disable and enable fields. We can set the value of fields automatically. Maybe you have a default value you always want to go in there. We can do something like that. We saw it opening GP forms when we did cash receipts. We can do that here. We can display dialogues. You'll see one of those trigger here in just a minute. But one of the other things we can do here is run GP script. So if you are somebody who writes Dexterity script, you can put that in there. If you're not, don't worry about it. We offer services to write that for you if you need to take it to that level, or if you have a partner that writes Dexterity script, I'm sure they'd be happy to do that as well. But we have a lot of options available here that don't require scripting at all. And a lot of times those will work for exactly what you want it to do. It's just we can go that extra level. With our batch ID, we've gone that extra step. We're actually pulling in the user ID that's logged into GP and the user date that is set up in GP and putting that as our batch ID. So you can see it's setting SA as my user and 4/12/2027 as my batch ID, just in a little bit different format. I chose to put the year first. So we can have it automatically doing that type of stuff for us. Now as I go through here, we'll just enter in, we'll just enter in a transaction here. Okay, and I'm just going to save that. And instead of doing an invoice this time, we'll do a return. And now when I tab off of that customer PO number, I actually have Extender doing a lookup on this sales transaction entry to see, does that customer PO number that I entered, along with the customer ID I selected, already exist on any sales transactions in my system? Whether it be in a work or history type scenario, I want to know, does this already exist? Because in our unique business needs, we don't allow for those to be duplicated. So it found one. You watched me enter an invoice that had that information on it. So it pops up a dialog saying a document has already been entered for this customer with this purchase order number. That's the dialog we chose to display. We typed that in. And then we get to choose some different buttons that we wanted to include. And now each of these buttons either is opening a GP window, one of the buttons runs some code. The delete option is just running what happens when you go to actions delete. So you can have buttons do different things, and you get to choose what that is when you're setting up your dialog. So I could delete this. I can continue on and say, you know what, I got approval to continue on this one time. So I can do that, or I can open the inquiry and I want to see where that record exists. Now we chose history as our default here. I'm going to change it to unposted because we didn't post that transaction. But here you can see that invoice that I entered on that has that same information on it. So there might be 5 of them in the system because maybe I got approval to continue a lot, but it's going to find the first one and display that for you. So we can have Extender Enterprise doing a lot of different things, not just on our Extender windows and forms like we saw in our tenant maintenance where we open cash receipts, but on our GP windows as well, where we're populating a batch ID or we're doing a customer ID and customer PO number check. There's a lot of different things we can do with that enterprise. So I hope with this we've shown you how Extender can help meet your unique business needs in Microsoft Dynamics GP. We showed a couple of examples. You kind of have to take those and how can I use that same type of theory in what I do in GP. Maybe you don't use items, but maybe you use employees. How can I add what I need to an employee similar to what Nicole just did to an item? So it might not be exactly what you need in GP, but kind of take that and incorporate it into what you might need. There's just a few other things I want to talk about here. If you're interested in pricing with Extender Standard or Enterprise, please let us know and we can get that pricing for you based on your location because we have several different options available for you on our pricing models. We also invite you to take a look at Extender. You can do so by going to the E1 Solutions website, which is e1solutions.com. From there, in the upper right corner, go to Downloads and select Extender. And then if we scroll down here, you'll see the different releases of Extender that are going to be compatible with your Microsoft Dynamics GP release. You'll see in the notes of each release which version of GP it is compatible with. Generally, the version number that it's showing for Extender will pretty much match the version number that you have for GP. So if you're on 2018, you'd want the Extender 2018. If you're on 2016, Extender 2016. You can download and use Extender in the Fabricam Inc. sample company without registration keys. It will unlock all of the features in Extender so that you can try out all the features that come with Extender Enterprise as well as Standard. And if you build out a new window or form in the sample company, that might be something you want to use live if you do decide to purchase Extender. We can always import those setups from Fabricam that you've set up into your live company. So you can certainly set up things that might be something you would use live, and then when you do purchase it and put in the registration keys, we can bring it over into those live companies. If you scroll down on the downloads page, you will notice we do have some different templates available depending on if you want to check out Standard or Enterprise. And that way you can import those into Extender and kind of learn how we've set that up. You will see things like the property management one we looked at, the default batch ID. Some of those are out here so that you can look at those as well and kind of learn from them, get ideas on how we set things up, that type of thing. So certainly use those templates. You can import them into Fabricam. What you do in Fabricam will not show up in any of your live companies when you do register Extender. Everything is very company specific, so you don't have to worry about playing around in that sample company and changing anything in your live company. Thank you for joining us, and I hope we've inspired you to take a closer look at Extender and see how it can help make Microsoft Dynamics GP everything you need for your business. If you do have additional questions, feel free to reach out to us. You can contact our sales team by emailing them at sales@e1solutions.com, or you can give them a call at 888-319-3663, and we'd be happy to answer any questions that you have. We also, on our website, in the upper left corner, have a chat option. When you select the questions, you can start a live chat with our sales team and ask any questions you have about Extender or any of our products there. So thank you for joining us, and have a great rest of your day.